Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Brianne Roth. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at the Nantucket Historical Association, and I want to welcome you all here this afternoon for our second Food for Thought for our fall series. Before we get started today, if everyone could please check your cell phones to make sure they're on silent so we don't disrupt today's presentation. As always, we thank you for joining us, and we would like to recognize that the Food for Thought program series is made possible in part by the MS Worthington Foundation, and that media sponsorship is generously provided by Novation Media. This afternoon's lecture will be followed by a short Q&A, so if you have any questions today, you can ask those questions after the presentation has ended. Today, we are delighted to feature Christine Harding, a researcher and writer who works on house histories for the Nantucket Preservation Trust. Christine graduated from Wells College and Syracuse University and holds a BA in English Literature and an MS in Secondary English Education. In another life, she was a high school English teacher in Clinton, New York, and owned Sheep to Shore here on Nantucket. We are also pleased to feature Susan Boardman, a needlework artist who has taken Nantucket on for her muse. Susan has been embroidering for as long as she can remember and first learned how to embroider from her mother when she was 5 years old. She moved to Nantucket in 1993 as a year-round resident and began making her embroidered narratives while exploring the lives of Nantucket women in the journals and letters in the NHA's archives. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Christine Harding and Susan Boardman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on this beautiful day. Before Susan and I begin, we would like to thank Brianne, the NHA, and Jack Weinhold for their wonderful assistance putting this presentation together. We are very glad to be here today to share with you a project we have worked on since about 2014, and we welcome your questions at the end. This is a work in progress that we hope to publish, and thus we hope you will respect our ownership of it.
Chris just mentioned it's a work in progress, which indeed it is. So a lot of the embroidered narratives you see up here as the illustrations are taken from somewhere else for now. And when we do publish, they'll all be appropriate specifically to the piece. But we put them in because it made it more fun for you all to see. So you might see, like we're talking about New Bedford, and it looked like Nantucket, but it'll look like New Bedford eventually. So just enjoy it, and thank you all for coming.
We began to talk about this sometime after we had been inspired by Nat Philbrick's wonderful book, Why Read Moby-Dick? Soon after we each read the novel, we decided Susan's embroideries paired with limericks could be a lighthearted presentation of Moby-Dick for those who haven't ever experienced the novel, in particular children with their parents. But as we worked on it further, we began to think this might be entertaining for readers who simply have never read the book, or for readers who have been defeated by the book, or readers who just plain love Moby-Dick. And yes, the bawdy, witty limerick. How perfect for Nantucketers, who will always be associated with that old chestnut about a bucket. As a literary form, the limerick itself is the butt of jokes. It does have a standard form, and I'm going to read to you what Wikipedia says about the limerick. The standard form of a limerick is a stanza of 5 lines, with the first, second, and fifth rhyming with one another and having 3 feet of 3 syllables each, and the shorter third and fourth lines also rhyming with each other, but having only 2 feet of 3 syllables. And that's the end of my English teacher role I'm going to play for you today. Still, the limerick is usually a silly thing, and many of you may be thinking, limericks with Moby-Dick? Really? That just doesn't fit. Moby-Dick is serious. It's dark. It's about a crazy captain and a monstrous whale. Limericks? And yes, it's true. Moby-Dick is a dark novel, but it is many things more than that. It is about the dark side of human nature, about how hate can turn into madness and ruin everything around us. It is a wildly exciting thriller, a multicultural adventure that is often laced with Melville's subtle, wicked, and delightful sense of humor. But Moby-Dick is also the beautifully crafted, quintessential American masterpiece that happens to be about the industry that defined Nantucket and, by extension, all of America. So, hang on to your hats, mates. Here we go. And by the way, Susan and I are always rooting for the whale. And after many discussions, we believe Melville was too. Call me Ishmael, and come hear my tale. 'Tis about an enormous white whale. The Pacific's his realm, a madman's at the helm. By the end, you will want to exhale. 'Twas November, and I was depressed, had no funds, and felt rather oppressed. To a ship I would take, and some money I'd make. This rhymed version is somewhat compressed. Soon, processions of whales filled my brain. 2 by 2 floated by unrestrained. Came a phantom midmost, a snow hill of a ghost. So a whale hunt became my campaign. The next day to New Bedford went I. At an inn I was asked if I'd try. Share a harpooner's bed? He's in town selling heads. I was slow with my stammered reply. Seems this fellow of South Seas extraction had brought heads of unreal petrifaction. Strung like onions a-drying, now had one left for buying. He was out on the town for some action. Am I safe? Asked I of the landlord. A rough man who gave out bed and board. Skylarking was he, with my naivety, but a head seller, and what if he snored? So I waited a quivering in bed, shaking there from the cold or my dread. Land of Nod I was near when his footsteps were clear. Wild imaginings danced in my head. Enter Queequeg, his face purple yellow. Grand tattoos decorating this fellow. From a sea bag he took a small idol, it looked, that he treated as something quite hallowed. This carving of Queequeg's was Yojo, a relic of gigantic mojo. In him he consulted, the result oft occulted. Queequeg stowed him away till the morrow. Then a tomahawk pipe he did bring into bed with a hop and a spring. As much reason has he to be frightened of me, to this reasoning now I did cling. In the morn I awoke with his arm over me, but I'd come to no harm. Then I stretched out and touched his tomahawk. 'Twas too much. He awoke when I cried my alarm. In a jiff he was up and got dressed, and I watched as he shaved with finesse. His harpoon's what he used. I was mighty amused. It was sharper than I'd ever guessed. To Nantucket that morning we went, and there Queequeg and I did cement. A friendship quite steady, we seemed more than ready to be part of a ship's regiment. Oh, Nantucket, away and offshore, your good whalers gone 3 years or more. The globe's water they know, they're true sea commandos and the heroes of whaling folklore. The Nantucketer, far from his land, furls his sails and is soon in dreamland. 'Neath his very pillow, rush a lovely combo, a wild walrus and whale wonderland. Now, good Yojo told Queequeg I'd know the right whale ship on which we should go. To the Pequod I went, marched inside Peleg's tent, quite determined to have my say-so. Then came Peleg, the owner's tough quiz, why I wanted the rough whaling biz. Are ye daft, he asked me? Could a pirate ye be? Are you ware what your captain has missed? Once good Ahab was hearty in hail, until crunched by the monstrousest whale. Only one leg has he, 'twas a parmacetti that unmasted your captain wholesale. Even so, I insisted on signing, though I heard Peleg's pointed opining. Partner Bildad I met, my poor lay he did set, which reflected my limited training. A bit later, Queequeg did the same, and to show off his skill, he took aim. His harpoon hit the dot. He was signed on the spot. His rude mark took the place of his name. But lo, we had not yet met Ahab. Our ship's captain was staying in rehab. His main moods were still gloomy, his whole mind's a bit roomy. Don't you worry, soothed owner Bildad. Peleg added, you'd be in a state, had a whale bit your leg and then ate. Would you eager be to go out on the sea? Wouldn't you too feel oceans of hate? So it was, we showed up to set sail. Christmas Day, we two stood at the rail. Our ship Pequod left shore for some 3 years or more in our search for the mighty sperm whale. At last, Captain Ahab now stomped. Round the deck, so pensive he clomped. His peg leg a cruel mark, his whole mind was so dark. Moby-Dick, the white whale that had chomped. Now this captain had one thing in mind, for his leg had been left well behind. It was in the Pacific. Moby-Dick there, he bit it, and on Ahab's long limb he had dined. Though glum Ahab, our leader, was grim, our stout whaler was stocked stern to stem. Provisions were many, though they'd watched every penny, the ship's larder was full to the brim. And the men were a wonderful lot. The ship Pequod, a grand melting pot. The crew, they were rovers from all the world over. What mattered were skills that they brought. Mr. Starbuck and Stubb were the mates, and Tashtigo had admirable traits. Other men on the trip, Flask, Daggoo, and Wee Pip, and Queequeg, I just can't overrate. But our captain has schemes he's possessed. Even Starbuck can't alter his quest. Ahab's nailed to the mast a doubloon of gold cast for the sailor who betters the rest. Who's the first to spy Moby wins gold? So said Ahab, this whaler of old. We shall kill that devil, and then we will revel, or so all the sailors were told. I was part of the clamor on board. I, too, drank down the rum Ahab poured. But a line had been crossed. Ahab's mind had been lost. 'Twas a madness that Starbuck deplored. For the captain, this whale signified all the evil e'er meant or implied, all the sins on this earth, of which there is no dearth. And old Ahab's response was wild-eyed. At long last, from the crow's nest we heard, 'twas an ear-splitting cry, shout the word. There, there, cried aloft, there she blows 2 miles off. The 4 whaleboats we quickly did board. This would be my first whale, that's for sure, and I marveled at what we endured. Rowing miles toward a fluke, I sure wanted to puke. Hunting whales had just lost its allure. We got closer, but then we just sat, watched for whales in their sea habitat. The air all a-tingly, the whales all commingly, harpooneers would soon be acrobats. So we whalers sat there all a hush. The 4 boats surged ahead in a flush. A squall on us landed. The great sea expanded. In a sudden, the whales were a rush. At the word, Queequeg sprang to his feet. The big moment had come for the athlete. Starbuck whispered it so grim. There, give it to him. Hear the rush of his iron, oh so fleet. But whoops! All at once in the sea were we crew. So we swirled in a vast, mixed-up stew. Squall, whale, and harpoon in the drink now bestrewn. Yet the whale, merely grazed, said, adieu. Our whaleboat was sound but awash. To our places we tumbled a slosh. All aboard, all collected, freezing cold and dejected. See, we'd lost every bit of panache. As we sat there, the Pequod appeared, to the waves of the storm well adhered. We'd been taken for lost and were surely star-crossed, but we swam for it, very much cheered. Once aboard, I considered my life and decided there wasn't much strife. Seemed a practical joke with its wit to invoke, but the humor did not seem so rife. When I asked, Queequeg gave me to know this ordeal was a typical show. Said he somewhat serenely, we rode very routinely. I was stunned by my calm bedfellow. Mr. Stubb was the next to be questioned. Pipe in mouth, he now tranquilly mentioned, oh, I've lowered for whales off ships leaking in gales round Cape Horn, he said, well-intentioned. 'Twas a marvel the trust that it took to sit backwards and row towards a fluke. Flask told me to think, rowing towards it, you'd blink. There's no doubt you'd be entirely spooked. So decided I right then and there that my will I should promptly prepare. Whaling risks were so great, my concerns would abate, and when done, I'd feel much less despair. Ahab's whaleboat, I failed to disclose, held 5 men from far archipelagos. All but one became crew, had a turbaned hairdo, and a tooth that stuck out past his nose. He was creepy Fedallah, so swart. A dark specter he seemed, a black heart. His front tooth so protruded, his hair coiled and extruded, a most sinister role seemed his part. Fedallah was so like a ghost that I thought him a phantom almost. Not akin to a brother, I paint him the other, but our captain was wholly engrossed. By and by, we passed ships then and now, and we'd call out a bright, loud, hello! But Ahab's one focus, the monster whale's locust, meant that gams were not often allowed. There was news of our Moby at last. To the town ho, our mates called, avast! Their crew raveled this yarn. Was it meant to forewarn? 'Cause the Pequod's men shuddered aghast. Seems the first mate, named Radney, had baited a sailor, steel-kilt, aggravated. Back and forth mayhem ruled, foolish hatred was fueled. But when Moby appeared, they abated. All the whaleboats were lowered at once. Steel-kilt rode Radney's lance at the front. They were fast soon enough, but the whale took their stuff, and old Radney was suddenly dumped. To escape from the white whale's keen eye, Radney thrashed, for he feared he would die. Moby's jaws got the swimmer, whose bright daylights grew dimmer, while the white whale reared up to the sky. Moby plunged again, down and headlong, so the men in the boat skimmed along. To the line, steel kilt sliced, Radney thus sacrificed. His sad fate I'll no longer prolong. Consider these both, land and sea, then compare your own gentle psyche. Round the green land so still swells the turbulent swill. In man's soul lies the isle Tahiti. To the northeast toward Java we aimed. A transparent blue sky was our frame. Soft waves whispered together, couldn't have finer weather, when a sight caused Daggoo to exclaim. We heard his stiletto-like cry, "The white whale, there, she breaches nearby." 4 boats pulled toward the prey, but it sank, so we stayed, till a wondrous phenom we soon spied. 'Twas a vast pulpy mass furlongs long, and with umpteen long arms in a throng. No perceptible face, it soon sunk with no trace. We were all rather glad it was gone. "I'd much rather fight Moby," said Starbuck. "This white monster has left me quite awestruck. 'Twas a squid most colossal. It appears to be docile, but for whalemen 'tis very bad luck." "Quick, soon you'll see sparm," said Queequeg, 'cause he knew off the squid sperm had fed. The next day we saw bubbles. Our new whale had big troubles. To the boats we excitedly sped. In good time, Stubbs' whaleboat took the lead, while the whale gave us flukes and gained speed. Puffing smoke from his pipe, our Stubb called, "Time is ripe! Give it to him! 'Tis time for the deed!" Strong Tashtego now hurled his great dart. The crew backwashed their oars, 'twas their part. The barb fastened just right, like a harp string so tight, but the whale chose to make a fresh start. Off he shot with the whaleboat in tow. Over water and air they did go. Whole Atlantics passed by. Men gripped seats lest they fly, a Nantucket sleigh ride without snow. Till at length the poor whale was worn out. "Now haul in," cried good Stubb with a shout. The rest was quite gory, a grim part of the story, though we know that's what whaling's about. By and by came a boat for a gam. 'Twas the Nantucket ship, Jeroboam. Yes, the white whale they'd sighted. First mate, Macy, delighted, could not wait to give Moby a slam. In the whaleboat he got his 5 men, and he soon had a sharp iron in. Then, with Macy in front, Moby's tail did him punt in an arc 50 yards, was his end. It is well to parenthesize here that of deaths, let's be perfectly clear. This kind is quite common, especially for bowmen, and oft with no marks that appear. Captain Ahab now tried to convey an old letter for Macy straightaway. He was hindered and told by a sailor quite bold, "Thou art soon to be going his way." From the Pequod we watched these events, speculating pernicious portents. Our moods were now pitchy, our nerves a bit twitchy. We were starting to be malcontents. Still we rallied when air whales were seen, and we toiled for the oil and baleen. Flask and Stubb got a right, then they all had a fight for a whale of quite elder demean. See, this bull trailed a nice pod of 8. He was huge with a much impaired gait. Tashtigo, Dagu, and Queequeg harpoons flew. They impaled this whale's side, their lines straight. All at once he dove down to the deep. The 3 boats sat, with nary a peep. Holding on, their lines tight, they thought oily delights, with their sterns at an angle quite steep. Deep below, the old guy must have seen 3 boat shadows. Oh dear, what did that mean? What a bad way to go. Think he knew his death blow would arrive as he surfaced this scene? 'Twas a mess of most gruesome proportions. The old whale in such writhing contortions, its blood rushing like rivers, quite gave me the shivers. Then he sank and was never apportioned. Though this sinking occurs time to time, and to lose one is such a darn crime, of whales sperms sink far less. It's from gas, I profess, although sometimes they rise. That's sublime. As a break, I just thought I'd include that some cetaceous myths are construed. There is Jonah who sloshed and emerged newly washed. 'Twas one heck of a wild rendezvous. For their air, finny tribes use their gills, but the whale has huge lungs that he fills. With the air through his spiracle, no doubt seems quite a miracle. 'Tis an hour before he refills. You could stand in that spout, in that blower. 'Tis a basin, a trough, and a shower. I think in that mist his deep thoughts there exist. It reflects his amazing brain power. Ah, this monster's so misty and mighty, his fine spray harbors many an idee. Oft a rainbow there forms. Are these vapors brainstorms? Heaven's blessings do seal them alrighty. 'Tis the tail of the whale I extol, for its beauty is strength on the whole. For propulsion and slapping, for sweeping and striking, and peaking the grandest of all. At the masthead, one sunrise I spied, a large herd heading east with flukes high. They vibrated their tails as together they hailed all the gods in the world side by side. On we sailed through the straits of Malay, but old Ahab allowed no delay. We witnessed whale nurseries. We saw many whale vapories, even though all but one got away. As we passed Java Head, we got whiffs, cinnamon from those green palmy cliffs. Then ahead, on both bows, was a vision for wows, sitting 2 or 3 miles from our skiff. Half a circle of slanting whale jets lay ahead. Could they sense their new threats? And behind us en route, pirate ships in pursuit. Soon these spouts looked like stacked bayonets. Now what followed in this mammoth quest, I'll not tell. It is all for the best. I'll just leave it to say that on this one day, we got one whale and just left the rest. The dark youngster of Pequod's fine crew was our Pip, a mere tar ingenue. He was new in Stubb's boat when a whale's tail did smote, and in fright he jumped into the stew. He was saved, but Stubb gave him a threat. Don't do that again, bud, you'll regret. But he did jump again and was left by the men. 'Twas the Pequod that threw him a net. It was not really Stubb's complete fault, for Pip caused a whale's capture to halt. There had been 2 boats back that could rescue this jack, but they passed, quite intent on assault. And thereafter he'd quite clearly changed. His sweet brain was now wholly deranged. So abandoned he'd been, so without kith or kin, that his young mind was never quite sane. This was such a sad turn of affairs, I've since pondered about with despair. As alone as was he, I as well would soon be, though I then did not bother to care. Noble Queequeg soon after took sick. With a fever, his face was quite slick. Now he writhed and he turned, in his illness he churned. "'Tis a coffin I need, pretty quick." So our carpenter set to the task. In no time he had cobbled a cask, and it pleased Queequeg so that he filled it pronto. He was cheered and was no more downcast. This fine islander from the South Seas soon displayed not a trace of disease. So he carved some tattoos, his bod's marvelous clues, on that box, and when nary a sneeze. The triumphant ship Bachelor appeared, her flags waving, beribboned with cheer. Every barrel, every vessel held sperm oil to the level, even filling the harpooner's spear. 'Twas a Nantucket ship, naturally. Seems she'd had so much luck on the sea, full of oil going home, no more waters to roam. Her cap called, "Come aboard now, will ye?" Our obsessed Ahab, he wasn't lured. He refused this kind man's overture, for he held not the tales. They'd not seen the white whale. They sailed on while the Pequod endured. Warmest climes they do nurse cruelest fangs, and we heard a typhoon's fierce bangs. All our sails were soon shred, the sky one thunderhead, all the while our mate Stubbs blithely sang. Then the seas bashed in Ahab's whaleboat, so that never again would it float. Starbuck's claimed the storm's tack would lead us straight to Ack. 'Twas for naught, because lightning did smote. On 3 masts all 3 yardarms now blazed, fiery crosses on which we now gazed. We were awed by their glow, and by Ahab's flambeau. His harpoon was a torch that he waved. All your oaths to hunt Moby do bind, you to me to you, you'd best mind. And with that he did blow out those flames. Oh, he showed he still had us, and we were entwined. More dire warnings we had yet ahead, shrieks from mermaids or the newly dead. Then a sailor aloft all of a sudden fell off, and his buoy descended like lead. They went to the bed of the sea, for it seems that his buoy was faulty. To replace it we'd trust Queequeg's coffin, we must, though that now seems a little creepy. Meet we did with a ship agitated, called the Rachel, so sadly ill-fated. With great Moby she'd met, now her captain's upset, and the search for his crew unabated. To make matters far worse, here's the scoop. Seems his 12-year-old son's in the group. To Moby they'd fastened, the worst likely has happened, for he fears they've been dumped in the soup. But when Ahab was asked by his guest to assist in their search, so distressed, "Nay, not we," Ahab said. "He's not right in the head. There's no way he would alter his quest." Starbuck tried to make Ahab abort his most foolhardy hunt. He'd exhort, "Get him out of your head. Let's go home," he oft pled. But the captain said, "You're a spoil sport." The next morn Ahab climbed the main mast. Soon he cried, "It is Moby at last! His humps white, a snow hill, My goal now I'll fulfill. To the boats all ye men now, avast. Meanwhile, Moby was peacefully cruising, all surrounded by nature's sweet musing, till at once he could sense a most dangerous offense, so he sounded with nary a bruising. In an hour, old Peg Leg did proclaim, but the birds, our telltale, were now trained. Over Ahab's small craft, 'twould soon be just a raft, for the monster, dear Moby, now aimed. Oh, he bit it in two, quite asunder. All around them his body did thunder. Ahab's boat quite destroyed. To the whale, just a toy. Off he swam with the crew, left to wonder. The next day, they watched Moby revived, as he breached at a distance, then dived. Oh, he shimmered, he did, and then under he slid, till he charged all three boats side by side. Boats were shattered, and ropes were a-flailing. Harpoons left, harpoons right, all went sailing. 'Twas a mess, to be sure, though it seemed all endured. We took count of the loss from this whaling. The Leviathan smashed the boats three, and he'd crushed the cap's leg below the knee. In the Pequod nearby, stalwart Starbuck swept by, and he rescued us all steadfastly. So, by lanterns all night the men toiled. They repaired the stove boats, ropes were coiled. Their allegiance was won, Ahab's leg was redone. This third day, Ahab wouldn't be foiled. But hold on, someone's missing, you see. Seems Fadala is gone, the Parsee. Ahab's lines wrapped him round the great whale, and he drowned. We soon sensed this, a dark prophecy. On the third day, the morn was quite fair, though old Ahab's a mad solitaire. With his gibberish and jabber and his blither and blabber of his madness, he's quite unaware. Toward the ship, Moby charged a white buttress. Retribution, swift vengeance were all his. With a whack he did hit starboard side of the ship. Salty waters poured in with a rush. Nearby, Ahab could see his ship sinking. He's in a whale boat, wildly thinking, I will get you, you devil. From hell's heart I'll thee level. You'll be mine with this harpoon I'm slinging. Ahab hurled his harpoon like the wind, so determined to bring Moby's end. His line snagged, ran afoul. He had no time to howl. It had wrapped round his bod, end to end. Ahab's gone from the boat like a shot, while his crew watched, aghast, overwrought. And their ship, they realized, it too sunk and capsized, sucked right down in a vortex, soon not. These men were, I am sad to report, also snatched in that huge final sport. Our weak numbers near zero, noble Moby, the hero, had struck with a final retort. In the end, there was no one but me. Ahab's wrath, just a bleak memory. Quick's coffin, my float, till a generous boat scooped me out of that sapphire sea. The end.
If anyone has a question, raise your hand and I'll come over to you. If anyone has a question about our presentation today. No questions? Okay. Well, I do invite everyone. Susan and Chris brought some of Susan's artwork, and it's up here on this table on display, so please come check it out. And on theme with Moby-Dick, on Friday, we have the Moby-Dick Marathon with the Athenaeum. And so the reading will start here. It will start at the Athenaeum on Friday and then start here at 6 p.m. So we'll be reading in this hall from 6 to 10 p.m. on Friday for Moby-Dick. It's free admission, so please do come by on Friday. Thank you all for coming. Oh, yes, Karen. Oh.
This is not a comment, a question, it's a comment. I thought this worked so beautifully on so many different levels. First of all, it was a magnificent performance piece. I felt I was sitting here and somebody was reading me a story, like a child, a storybook. And then the beautiful narrative, so unusual in a book, Chris's amazing interpretation in Limerick of Moby-Dick. I was blown away.
Thank you.
And I think this needs to be published.
Thank you, Karen. Let's have a big round of applause for Christine and Susan. Thank you all for coming today.